For the island group, see Isles d'Hyères. Hyères, Provençal Occitan. Hyères in classical norm, or Hyères in Mistralian norm, is a commune in the Var department in the Provence-Alpes Côte d'Azur region in southeastern France. The old town lies 4 kilometers from the sea, clustered around the castle of Saint Bernard, which is set on a hill. Between the old town and the sea lies the pine-covered hill of Costable, which overlooks the peninsula of Giens. Hyères is the oldest resort on the French Riviera. History. Hellenic Olbia. The Hellenic city of Olbia was refounded on the Phoenician settlement that dated to the 4th century BC. Olbia is mentioned by the geographer Strabo as a city of the Massiliotes that was fortified against the tribe of the Salies and against those Ligures who live in the Alps. Greek and Roman antiquities have been found in the area. The first reference to the town dates from 964. Middle Ages. Originally a possession of the Viscount of Marseille, it was later transferred to Charles of Anjou. Louis IX, King of France, landed at Hyères in 1254 when returning from the Crusades. A commandery of the Knights Templar was based at the town in the 12th century, outside the town walls. The remaining remnant is the Tower St. Blaise. 20th century. After defecting from Soviet intelligence in 1937, Walter Krivitsky hid in Hyères. World War II. As part of Operation Dragoon on 15 August 1944, the joint United States-Canadian 1st Special Service Force came ashore off the coast of Hyères to take the islands of Port-Cros and Levant. The small German garrisons offered little resistance and the whole eastern part of Port-Cros had been secured by 6:30 a.m. All fighting was over on Levant by the evening, but, on Port-Cros the Germans withdrew into old thick-walled forts. It was only when naval guns were brought to bear that they realized that further resistance was useless. French forces, naval units and colonial formations, including Senegalese infantry, became involved on the 22nd of August and subsequently occupied the island. U.S. Canadian Special Forces landing at the eastern end of Porquerolles took large numbers of prisoners, the Germans preferring not to surrender to the Senegalese. Geography. Its position facing the Mediterranean to the south makes it a popular location for tourism in the winter, and facilitates the cultivation of palm trees. About 100,000 trees are exported from the area each year. As a result, the town is frequently referred to as Hyères les Palmiers. The 3 islands of the Isles d'Hyères are located just offshore. Porquerolles and Port-Cros form the Port-Cros National Park. The commune has a land area of 132.38 square kilometers. British in Hyères. Lord Albemarle, the British ambassador, stayed in Hyères during the winter 1767 to 1768. But it was the 2 visits of the Prince of Wales during the winters of 1788 and 1789 which made Hyères popular with the British. The English agronomist Arthur Young visited Hyères on the advice of Lady Craven on 10 September 1789. He mentioned the many British living there in his book Travels in France. The London-born and Eton-educated Anglo-Grisan Charles de Salis died in Hyères in July 1781, aged 45, and was buried in the Convent des Cordeliers. In 1791, Charlotte Turner Smith published her novel Celestina, which is set in Hyères. During the period of the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars, the British left the area, but they returned after 1815. Joseph Conrad, who lived for a while in Hyères, wrote his novel The Rover, which is set in Hyères during those years. William Fitzroy, 6th Duke of Grafton, spent the winter and spring each year at Hyères because he and his wife suffered from ill health. And Edwin Lee M.D. published in 1857 a book on the virtues of the climate of Hyères for the recovery of pulmonary consumption, and in November 1880, Adolphe Smith first published The Garden of Hyères. In 1883, Robert Louis Stevenson came to Hyères and for about 2 years lived first at the Grand Hotel, and then in a chalet called Solitude in the present Rue Victor Bache. He wrote then, "That spot our garden in our view a sub-celestial. I sing daily with Bunyan, that great bard. I dwell next door to heaven." In later years, he wrote from his retreat in Vailima, "Happy, I was only happy once, that was at Hyères." In 1884, Elizabeth Douglas, daughter of Alfred, Lord Douglas, had a small cottage, as she called it, built on the Costable Hill by the architect Thomas Donaldson, who used to spend his winters in Hyères during those years. The British presence culminated in the winter of 1892 when Queen Victoria came for a stay of 3 weeks at the Albion Hotel. At that time, the British influence was so strong that shop signs were in both French and English. There was an English butcher, a chemist, 2 banks, and 2 golf courses. There were also 2 English churches, whose buildings still exist: All Saints' Church at Costable and St. Paul's English Church, Avenue Beauregard. Some signs of this English presence have vanished, like the small dell in the cemetery where there were once some 100 graves. Some of these, such as those of Lord Arthur Somerset or Richard John Meade, bore testimony to the aristocratic nature of the community. Other vestiges remain, like the fountain near the new public library in a square shaded by a plane tree. The inscription reads, "In loving memory of Marianne Stewart, who died on the 18th of August 1900. She labored many years in the cause of mercy to animals. Her last wish was that a drinking fountain should be set up for them in Hyères." Many wounded British soldiers were sent to the town to convalesce during World War I. Transportation. The railway station Gare de Hyères offers connections with Toulon, Marseille, Paris, and several regional destinations. The airport, which is known officially as the Toulon-Hyères International Airport, is situated 4 kilometers to the southeast of the town centre, on a sandy plain close to the seashore. The area was first used by private aircraft at the beginning of the 20th century. In 1920, after the marsh had been drained, French naval aircraft used the field, and, in 1925, it became an official base of the French Fleet Air Arm. It has been a commercial airport since 1966. But the Navy maintains a significant facility for helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft within the perimeter. There are currently scheduled flights to and from Stockholm, Bristol, Ajaccio, Paris, London, Brest, Brussels and Rotterdam. Personalities. Hyères was the birthplace of Jean-Baptiste Massillon, churchman and preacher. The author Jean-Marie Edmond Sabran, who wrote under the pseudonyms Paul Berner, Bernard Deluser and Paul Gerard Wuss, and Joel Audren, was born in Hyères. Twin towns. Hyères is twinned with Rottweil, Germany and with Koekelberg, Belgium. Culture. Hyères is home to the Hyères International Fashion and Photography Festival, a huge fashion and art photography event which has taken place annually at the end of April since 1985. This festival was among the first to recognize the talents of Victor and Rolf. The city also plays host to the annual Midi French Riviera Festival in July, a music festival now into its 6th episode. 2010's Midi saw around 15 acts play at the Villa Noailles complex and brought the new Midi Night event to Almenara Beach in the early hours of Sunday morning.